Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're here with another viewer-requested episode.
Let me just say, we love viewer requests.
Yes, and for all those people who are out there who want to put in a request, but think that because Purdy Do is getting in all the requests right now, that perhaps there isn't enough room for more requests. We have almost an infinite amount of space for requests. It doesn't mean we'll necessarily get to them all, but
what we want is more interaction with you.
yes.
We want you to comment.
We want you to comment and like and subscribe and send us your ideas, because some days we really could use an idea.
But anyway, today we have an idea
Today
about a saint.
A saint who is not in the Bible, and we actually were able to discover some things about them.
So that's what we do.
Yeah. So today we're going to be discussing Saint Ulphia, also known as Saint Ulphia, Saint Ulphia, Wolfia, Wolphia.
So very clearly all just variations on a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and clearly, I mean, I'm seeing enough of a theme here that I'm thinking that perhaps some people just weren't good at pronouncing their name, and
Well, plus,
they needed to enunciate better.
And when everything is handwritten, there are more opportunities for variation to be introduced than when you have set type.
Yes.
She was born in the year 711. Apparently a big fan of Slurpees. In modern-day France, possibly near the Noy River, died January 31st, 750. So, lived to the ripe old age of 39 in Faucon, France.
Yes.
Her feast day is January 31st, as is usual, the day of death, or the day of birth into eternal life.
Her attributes are a young nun, often sitting on a large rock praying with a frog in a pool. Her patronage is frogs, amphibians, and amphibian keepers. Very specific patronages
For reasons that are going to become very apparent as we go into her life.
Yep, she was a nun, a hermit, a foundress, and according to most stories about her, a beastmaster.
A beast mistress.
I don't know, because there's a
These
problem.
are the meanings of the words. As a young girl.
All right.
Moving on.
As a young girl, she lived on the banks of the Noy River. Saint Domitius was her spiritual director for a time, and she lived at Saint Acule Abbey for a while.
See, that's pretty cool. I mean, she got to live in an abbey, and she had a saint as her spiritual director. It's hard enough to find a spiritual director, and let alone, I mean, obviously she didn't know at the time that he was a saint, but still.
Yeah.
Yes, according to some stories that I didn't see enough of to know for sure, but apparently they'd each go from their abbeys and monasteries to the church during the day to pray the hours and just like hang out together, doing churchy stuff.
All very right and proper.
She became a hermit near Amiens in the kingdom of the Franks.
Every single one of them was named Frank.
Yep. Near the end of her life, she formed a community of religious women there in Amiens, possibly because a number of other women were attracted to her hermit lifestyle.
And this is something we see throughout the history of the church. A holy person goes out into the wilderness to become holier. They want to be a hermit, or they want to be alone, and
People just keep coming up going, hey, what you doing? I'm being a hermit. Thank you. Can I do that too? Sure. You can do that too.
St. Anthony the Great,
Over there.
the father of monasticism, wanted to be alone in the desert. And before he knew it, he had a whole community of guys around him. Hey, you seem to know what you're doing. Can you show us?
Yeah.
See that tree on the horizon there? Yeah? Go there and be a hermit.
St. Benedict, he just wanted to be by himself, but people just kept flocking to him.
Apparently, there was a bunch of women who made their own little hermitages all around her, and eventually she's like, all right, I'm going to have to organize them. But after she organized them, she then left to go and be on her own again. She's like, all right, now you guys are taken care of.
What?
Bye.
I see that as reasonable. All right, fine. I've given you a rule of life now.
All right, but there are a number of stories about why she is the patron of frogs.
And they're awesome.
Yes. The simplest one was her hermitage was in a swampy area, and so there was a large number of frogs that lived in the area and kept her up all night with their croaking.
And singing It's Not Easy Being Green.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She told them to be quiet, and since then, the frogs in the area are quieter than other frogs, including some, a couple of century ago things about how you can take one of those frogs, move them away from the area, and they get loud again. Or take, a frog that's just random and put it in the area and it gets quieter again.
So all frogs in this radius are quiet.
Yes.
It's amazing.
There's a slightly more complicated story.
We like slightly more complicated stories.
That once when she was traveling, she found a group of frogs that had men chasing them, and they were trying to kill them because the croaking was stopping a local priest from praying.
If you're going to go kill frogs, that's not the worst reason.
No.
And because it was stopping him from praying, they also thought they might be possessed and causing all the wet weather that was, upsetting the crops because the fields were staying damp.
Although at the same time, Mike, I'm going to say if you're a priest and the croaking of the frogs is keeping you from prayers, get good.
I mean, nowadays we pay good ad time in order to go and listen to frogs croaking in the background and crickets. And one time I was spending a night at a friend's house, and they clearly had the area where the local groups sprayed way too much chemicals because there was no frogs, there was no crickets. It was so eerily science that they had to apologize. I'm sorry, it's freaky weird. There's no noises.
You find yourself on Mars. Ugh.
But anyway, so she rescues these frogs by hiding them under her robes, and they climbed up her legs and stuff and things until she got back to her river where she released them and they made their new home there.
And then we're very well behaved.
Yes. And then we have
that is a fantastic legend.
Yes. And then we have the most extra story about it, which parts of this, it was, largely deemed to be not realistic, and that's why she, is allowed to be the patron saint of amphibians, because it involves a banned book.
Okay, so the most extra story is that she understood the Song of Frogs and wrote the Frog's Ballad, or it also goes by The Tale of Saint Ulphia, in her own personal copy of the Book of Hours.
Which back then, paper was really expensive, so if you had extra sheets, because, there's complex math for how many, and it's got to be a multiple of 4, 8, or 16, depending on the size of the paper. People totally use the extra pieces of paper for other things,
Waste not, want not.
So, there is pages that were found missing from her copy of the Hours that would have been just a blank page at the beginning or end. So the fact that they're missing pages does not mean they were then used for this. And the first copy of the tale that was written down that people found was from 91 years after her death. So, and
apparently the tale has a very complicated and somewhat scandalous story.
Yes, and while most copies of the tale were destroyed after the tale was declared heretical in 841. From oral retelling and the one copy that survived, we know the main ideas of the tale. The tale is told in the first person from the perspective of a bullfrog.
Is his name Jeramiah?
Don't know.
We don't have a name.
It is about the time before men, when all animals could speak and spoke the same language.
Also, in this book, it implies...
So a frog version of Babel?
Well, in the book, it also stated that before Babel, everyone, humans, animals, spoke the same language. The animals were now silent to human ears, but they all could still understand each other up until that point.
Okay.
Okay.
I can't disprove it.
God was coming to visit the animals. They were all excited and wondering in what form God would take, because they knew they could not see his true form, because then they would be wise like the angels. Anyway, all the animals were getting ready and discussing which one of them God would look like when the frogs asked what they should do. The other animals thought they were ugly, so they were told to hide so God couldn't see them. When God appeared, he appeared as a man, and the frogs left their hiding place to see him. God saw them and spit on them, making the other animals think even more poorly of the frogs. But as the spit got on their skin, eyes, ears, and mouths, the frogs could know God in all of his splendor. He spoke just to them and gave them important information no one else had. Okay, I'm seeing where they're getting to the hereticalness of this. This sounds Gnostic-y.
It's got some stuff. I mean, we got the story of the the Bible with the the blind guy that the spit went and made him see. It's got a traditional folklore of everyone thinks these people are hideous and useless and stuff, and suddenly they are. But it did just in the story itself say that essentially frogs are the equivalent of angels on Earth, but with bodies.
Frog
knowing
propaganda.
The secret of
So
the
the
true nature of God.
So when the frogs' time on Earth was growing short, and they needed to pass on this information, that's the end of the frogs' ballad. However, around that time there was an issue with the numbers of the frogs' population.
Yeah. The story ends with essentially it is Armageddon coming up for frogs, and they have to spread their whatever message, and that's the end of the story. However, coincidentally, at the same time, there was a lot of frogs in the era. It was a good year for frogs.
A veritable plague of frogs.
Yeah.
The level of noise was such that it alarmed Bishop Rambertus of the Diocese of Amiens, and he considered it such an unnatural and unholy activity that he placed the location under interdict.
Yeah, like clearly French priest at this time really had a thing about worrying about frogs.
Well, again, these are people whose cuisine includes frog legs, so clearly that animus has not gone away.
No disrespect to the bishop here,
Sure.
as I don't know enough about them to determine whether or not they are worthy of my disrespect.
But it's not like bears
But
that are
I
either
really
godless
feel
or
that
godly killing
I really
machines.
feel
They're
like
frogs.
that. I really feel like this falls under my previous comment of if the frogs are so bad that the frog noise is so bad that you can't pray good, get better. Look, I'm a very distractible person. I understand things distracting me and getting in the way of my prayer time.
I do have to say,
sorry, Jess. I think you're underappreciating just how annoying a horde of frogs constantly croaking could be.
it is, but I think threatening everyone who lives in the area with excommunication for simply you're too close to these frogs is a bit much.
Interdict is always remedial and temporary.
See, I just think at a certain point, the frog croaking becomes like white noise. There's just so much of it, and it's impossible to tune out that it just kind of fades into the background.
But anyway, because today's saint listened to the frog croaking so much, she understood their song, and therefore, apparently, they understood her, because it doesn't say that she spoke frog, just she understood them. Mm-hmm. But she taught... Can you move your hand?
Oh, sorry. It gets...
I know, but when my hair's down, you're just yanking it. Anyway, so as she understood frogs, so they understood her in return. She told them they had to be quiet because otherwise she'd have to leave the area. So the frogs did. And then they removed the things, and they weren't at any trouble from the bishop because of the quiet frogs.
So we have several flavors of the same story. A lot of noisy frogs. She quiets them down. You can get this in regular, slightly better, and then
wackadoo,
and then extra crazy. Yeah, yeah, that's really a thing.
I mean, I didn't include it in here, but there's of course all the Aesop fables level things of like the giraffes are like, oh, I'm gonna see God first because we're the closest to heaven. And the peacocks are like, I bet he's gonna show up as a peacock because we're the awesomest animal. And
yeah. And the peahens are just like jerks, shaking their heads. Peacocks think they're so fancy.
There was a crocodile, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. So, Purdy, there's the story of Saint Ulphia.
We hope you enjoyed. We hope everybody else enjoyed it as well. And we hope you all go down below to the comment section and request some more saints.
Maybe you know another saint whose story of how they became patrons of something could be completely crazy involving banned books.
Yeah.
Feel free to leave recipes down below for frog's legs.
Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it and give us a thumbs up because thumbs up are cool. And until next time, remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
Share that love.